Hello everyone and welcome back to another Average Review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Best Buy exclusive McFarlane Toys DC Direct, the new Batman Adventures Legends of the Dark Knight 3-pack. Boy, was that a mouthful. Taking a quick look at the packaging, and I haven't reviewed any of these DC Direct New Batman Adventures re-releases, but, I mean, the box is pretty nice. It's your standard window box. We have the New Batman Adventures logo down here, the McFarlane Gold Label logo, since this is a store exclusive, along with the fact that this is the Legends of the Dark Knight 3-pack, and, of course, the names of the three characters we get in this 3-pack being Batman, the Mutant Leader, and Carrie Kelly Robin. Now, on the back, we have what I believe was the actual, original art produced for the Dark Knight Returns section of the Legends of the Dark Knight episode from the New Batman Adventures, which is pretty dang cool. But it would be a lot cooler if we got the figures out of the box, so let's try doing that. Well, we got a pretty interesting lineup of figures here, so moving on to the sculpting and paintwork, let's of course start out with the titular legendary Dark Knight himself, Batman. Alright, looking at Batman, and yeah, he's got a pretty cartoonish design, which, it fits. This is a figure based on an episode of a cartoon. Specifically, a section from the episode Legends of the Dark Knight, which adapted part of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. And, this is a pretty cartoonish looking reflection of the Frank Miller art of Batman from that story. He's big and bulky, and, he's got that massive chin, but everything is very, very exaggerated and also simplified. I mean, the pouch is very simple, he's a pretty smooth figure. I mean, he doesn't really have any facial wrinkles, but it still definitely gets across, the design of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns Batman. And I absolutely love how this figure looks. He is a literal brick wall. I mean, first of all, look at how wide his shoulders are. And also, look at how hunched over he is. Judging by his posture, this Batman spent most of his retirement sitting at the Bat computer. I also really like the colors used, it's pretty much the perfect shade of gray for Batman, and this shade of blue works perfectly for the Dark Knight Returns version of Batman, and of course that yellow really, really pops. Now moving down to his legs, and I mean, it's adorable. They're really, really tiny legs, but they're still super stocky, so he almost looks proportionate, at least in terms of his proportions, being super cartoonish, he's got his big hands too, and I also really like the logo, it's a classic Golden Age style Batman logo, which, of course, is another thing adapted from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. I do really like how the head sculpt looks. I mean, I've mentioned already, it's very simplified, but it does look like an older version of the classic animated series Batman, just a lot bigger. Moving from the chunkiest figure in the box to the smallest, we have the other half of the dynamic duo, Carrie Kelly as Robin. And a lot of the same, compliments that I gave to Batman apply to this Robin, except sort of in the opposite way. Because, I mean, she is tiny. This is a very dainty looking figure, which, fits Carrie Kelly being a young, teenager, which, that's what she is. She's a teenager in a Robin costume. I like how the head sculpt just sort of reminds me of Velma from Scooby-Doo, which, fits with this super cartoonish, simplified design. And hey, I mean, the overall Robin body is really good. I mean, they got all the details right, which I'd hope they do. It's a pretty simple costume, but yeah, they did it pretty well. The R logo is just painted on, but the actual black circle is sort of raised. So, it's not just tampoed on. It's got a tiny bit of sculpting. I do like the yellow belt buckle with the black belt. And hey, it's got a nice little short cape, which, definitely fits with the Carrie Kelly version of Robin. So, just like Batman, super accurate, super cartoonish. It's a lot of fun. Alright, now it's time for the craziest figure in the box, the Mutant Leader. And he sort of combines elements of both Batman and Robin's proportions, because he's got the super bulky shoulders and upper torso, along with the dainty little legs and ankles, which does make this guy kinda hard to stand up. Now, he's got a lot of fun details, like, for example, the spike belt around his waist, and I mean, it's a pretty good Mutant Leader head sculpt. It's especially accurate to the episode of the New Batman Adventures. He's got the Cyclops-like visor, he's got sort of a pin head, he's got the spiky ears and the really, really sharp teeth, and of course, the spiky nipples. Because, I mean, if you're gonna lead a super violent gang of criminals that murder and torture people, you better have spiky nipples. I also do find it interesting that in the New Batman Adventures, they made the Mutant Leader, like, completely pale. I do wonder if that was to either tie him to the Joker, since, I mean, in the episode, we only see Batman fight the Mutant Leader, or they wanted to make him seem more monstrous and inhuman, or they just thought it looks cool and felt like it. Honestly, I'm fine with any of those, because it is a pretty striking design for the Mutant Leader. Even if most of it is just the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns design, which, of course, isn't a problem. I mean, that's what they're adapting. Now, these are wildly different figures, especially in terms of proportions. But, for the most part, they all share the same basic articulation scheme. So let's see who has the best range. All three figures have a ball joint for head articulation. Batman's is closer to his neck since, that hunchback. He gets a pretty good amount of up, especially considering how hunched over he is. He doesn't get any down, though. He gets a bit of side to side, and he can rotate his head all the way around like he's in The Exorcist. For Robin, the ball joint is in the head. She can look up this far, she can actually look down, tilt side to side, and spin all the way around. Mutant Leader's head articulation is at the collar or choker or whatever that thing is. He doesn't get much up or down. He does get a good amount of tilt side to side, and of course, all the way around. They all have articulation in the shoulders, which allow them to spin their arms around and raise up. Carrie Kelly gets the lowest at about 45 degrees, while the Mutant Leader gets a bit above that, and slightly more so for Batman. They've all got single-jointed elbows that can hinge and swivel side to side. Mutant Leader gets the worst bend being a bit under 90 degrees, but that's no surprise given the bulk of his arms. Carrie Kelly is in second place, nearly reaching 90. And Batman gets full credit for bending his elbows 90 degrees, especially considering the bulk of his arms. Both Batman and Carrie Kelly also have a forearm swivel along with that elbow swivel. I guess this would be if you want to have Batman's fins sticking out to the side instead of on the back of his arms. Or if you want Carrie's gloves to be put on slightly differently. But one thing that all three have is hands that can swivel all the way around and hinge up or down. Now, Mutant Leader may not have a forearm swivel, but he has a point of articulation that the other two don't that's a lot more useful. He's actually got a diaphragm joint that lets him bend forward this far and backwards this far, along with tilting side to side and spinning around. All three figures have a waist swivel. Mutant Leader's is unimpeded thanks to his belt ending right below where the waist cut is. Batman's waist swivel is a little limited by his belt, but he still manages to get a good amount of twist for a hero at his age. And unfortunately, Carrie Kelly doesn't get much twist side to side at all. All three figures have a swivel at the hips, which allow them to kick forward. Mutant Leader has the worst kick, being about 45 degrees. Carrie Kelly gets second, being a bit obstructed by her red tunic. And in first place is Batman, kicking about 90 degrees. Like I said earlier, impressive for a guy of his age. All three figures also have a separate joint which allows them to split. Carrie definitely has the worst performance here, definitely being obstructed by her tunic once again. Mutant Leader probably comes in second. I mean, that's an amazing split, although that's probably due to his dainty little thin legs. And most impressively is once again Batman getting first place with a pretty much perfect split. Although I do gotta admit, his definitely looks the most unnatural out of the three. Unfortunately, in terms of the single jointed knee bends, Batman's definitely got it the worst. As usual, Mutant Leader comes in second with a pretty dang good bend. I mean, that's nearly 90 degrees. And surprisingly, Carrie Kelly actually gets first place, having a full-on 90-degree bend. Unfortunately, the last piece of articulation that old Batsy has is a boot swivel, which is useful, but he doesn't have any kind of ankle articulation. That is unlike Carrie Kelly and the Mutant Leader. Carrie gets a pretty good amount of ankle bend, but the Mutant Leader definitely has it better. I mean, that's a pretty wide range of ankle bend. Now, these three definitely don't have the strongest articulation. But they do have it where it counts, and plus, these animated figures are mostly about the sculpt work, being accurate to the animated designs, not articulation. And with how bulky Batman and the Mutant Leader are, they definitely have a pretty passable amount of articulation. Moving on to the figure comparisons, we of course have to start out with the standard male and female body comparisons. Renew Your Vows Spider-Man and Spinneret from the Hasbro Marvel Legends line. And these two might be taller than and at the same height as this Batman respectively, but he's about twice as wide as both of them. Of course, since Spidey was taller than Batman, it's no surprise that both Spidey and Spinneret absolutely dwarf Carrie Kelly Robin. Mutant Leader is actually taller than both Spidey and Spinneret, and of course, a lot wider. For two blue and gray versions of regular Batman, we have the Mattel DC Superhero Select Sculpt Batman on the left, and the McFarlane DC Multiverse Nightfall Batman on the right. Here's Carrie Kelly being dwarfed by both versions of Batman. And here's the mutant leader, who is surprisingly the same height as the McFarlane Nightfall Batman. What do you know? For some Dark Knight Returns specific Batman comparisons, we have the older, jaded versions of Batman by Mattel and DC Direct. Carrie Kelly really doesn't work with the super detailed and fairly realistic DC Direct version, but she doesn't look too out of place with the slightly brighter, or should I say, very brighter, and also a bit more cartoonish Mattel version. And of course, here's the two Batmen with the mutant leader. I'm sure they're very glad that they fought a mutant leader around their size instead of this Titan. But for one other Batman, we have the new Batman Adventures version of the Dark Knight Returns Batman with the Batman v Superman Armored Batman, which is of course based on his fight with Superman from the Dark Knight Returns. Speaking of Superman, here's Batman with Mattel and McFarlane versions of the regular Big Blue Boy Scout. The Mattel one is from DC Universe Classics, and the McFarlane one is from the Atomic Skull 2-pack, which was an Amazon exclusive. Also, here's Carrie Kelly with both versions of Supes, since she did sorta help out with Batman's fight against Superman. For the villain who pretty much kickstarted the Dark Knight Returns, at least besides the mutant leader, we have Two-Face, specifically from the DC Universe Classics Gotham City 5-pack. I think if this Batman fought this Two-Face, Two-Face just wouldn't have a face or even a head at all anymore. It would just be absolutely eviscerated after one punch. Speaking of Batman killing one of his villains, we have the Joker, because, yeah, that's what Batman kinda sorta not really did in The Dark Knight Returns. He only paralyzed him from the neck down. On the left, we have the Mattel Golden Age Joker from the Batman Legacy line, and on the right, we have the McFarlane DC Digital Silver Age Joker. Also, here's Carrie Kelly, and the mutant leader with both of these clown princes of crime. Why am I bringing out the mutant leader now? Well, I haven't brought him out in a while, and he was getting lonely. But, as is tradition, here's the Legends of the Dark Knight versions of Batman, Robin, and the Mutant Leader with Hit Monkey and Goliath. Now, we've gone over the sculpt, paintwork, articulation, and comparisons for these figures, but there's definitely two more questions running through your mind. 1. Where does he get all those wonderful toys, and what are those wonderful toys that he comes with? Well, in terms of alternate hands, both Batman and the Mutant Leader come with a pair of fists and a pair of open hands. I like how Batman's hands are more big, blocky, they look like they'd be for, holding something or grappling during a fight, while the Mutant Leader has more slender, claw-like hands, definitely made for scratching someone's face open. Or just mauling them like he did to the mayor in The Dark Knight Returns. On the literal other hand, Carrie Kelly comes with the same pair of fists, along with the same pair of open hands. Of course, they are much tinier since, as I've said many times, this is a very tiny figure. But she also has a pair of accessory holding hands, which is made to use her slingshot, and I'm really glad they included Carrie's slingshot, since she uses it a fair amount of times in the story. And hey, the episode of the new Batman Adventures is no different, since she uses it briefly to attack other mutants, and of course, the mutant leader during his fight with Batman. But, just like an infomercial, you better wait, cause there's more. Cause this set also comes with 2 figure stands. They come with, of course, the stand itself, which has the new Batman Adventures logo on it, along with a rod and a clip right here, which you can, move up and down, or use to knock over Carrie Kelly and also accidentally take it off. They've, of course, got clips right here, which open like so. They actually are sort of got some sort of spring, because they immediately just close shut tight around wherever you stand the figure with, presumably the waist. I do think it's a little optimistic that they actually included figure stands here, because I think the only one that you could 100% stand with these clips would be Carrie Kelly, or maybe if you're risky, the mutant leader, but I don't know, I'll have to try. And hey, I was right, the clip actually does work for the mutant leader. Honestly, yeah, I can see why they only included 2 stands, since, these are the only 2 figures you can use these clips or stands with. Because there is no way in hell you're putting that tiny little clip around this brick wall of a figure. But that's still not it, cause this 3-pack comes with 3 animation cell reproductions of stills from this very section of the episode. They're in a nice, slip cover with the new Batman Adventures logo. You can see the first one is Batman fighting the mutant leader, Carrie Kelly in the junkyard watching the fight, and mutant leader calling for Batman's name as he hides in the Batmobile. Another thing that's nice is on the back of the case, you can see, of course, it's an animation cell reproduction, but they actually do list the episode, a brief synopsis, the air date, the director, the writer, the animators, and the music producers. So, I mean, that's pretty dang cool. Granted, owning real animation cells would be cooler, but I don't see McFarlane Toys putting those in mass-produced figures, so yeah, this is definitely the better option. Now, I did mention this set was a Best Buy exclusive, and the retail price for this set at Best Buy was about $70, which is pretty dang expensive, but this is a 3-pack, and that would value each figure at about $23-ish, a little more, but around that range, which, it's not the best, but it could be a lot worse. But Best Buy currently has this set on sale for $35, which would mean you're paying for about $11.50 per figure. So, yeah, I'd say that's a pretty dang good price. But that sale is eventually gonna run out, and it's gonna be back to regular retail. Best Buy still has the set in stock on their website, though, so if you want to jump on that deal, then, I mean, if you can afford it, go ahead. So, for my final thoughts, I gotta say I'm pretty satisfied, especially since these are the first DC Collectibles Batman the Animated Series figures I've bought. They definitely don't fit in with the other figures in my collection, but they aren't supposed to. They're based on the new Batman Adventures cartoon, and they're not meant to be, realistic or comic book styled. And these figures do a great job of looking like they're straight out of that episode of the new Batman Adventures. I mean, it is exact. And hey, for these super stylized and, for the most part, bulky designs, they have some pretty serviceable articulation. I'm also pretty glad that McFarlane re-released this set, since before the re-release, it was pretty dang expensive and also incredibly hard to track down. That does go for a lot of the McFarlane re-releases of these Batman the Animated Series figures, though. In terms of complaints, I don't really have many other than Batman could really do with some ankle articulation, and Carrie Kelly, despite being the spindliest one in the set, her articulation is actually for the most part worse than the bulkier Batman and Mutant Leader. But hey, for the price I got these figures at, I'm fine with those downsides. And so I'm going to give the McFarlane Toys New Batman Adventures Legends of the Dark Knight 3-pack a 9 out of 10. I do have to admit, that's in part to me really, really loving that section of that Legends of the Dark Knight episode where they adapted The Dark Knight Returns. Very briefly, though. But hey, these figures are still awesome in their own right. For those still watching, have a great day because you deserve it. And if you're celebrating it tomorrow, happy early Easter. Bye-bye.